Okay, I'd like now to invite to speak Mr. Alexander Hochreutner, who's a partner at BRS Brokers. Alex is going to give us a presentation about carbon credits, an alternative finance tool to fuel energy transition, in the shipping industry. So, Alex, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. All right, to share my screen. All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, for the quick introduction. So hello, everyone. Today I'll be utilizing this platform to talk to you about how carbon credits, specifically carbon offsets can be used as an alternative finance tool to fuel the energy transition of the shipping industry. A quick background on BRS, for those that don't know who we are. We are global shipbrokers. We were founded in 1856, more than 150 years of experience. Currently, we're one of the largest privately held shipbrokering groups. We have more than 530 employees, over 210 of which are shipbrokers, and have offices in 19 locations globally. We cover all the traditional sectors of shipbrokering, from new building, S&P freight brokering, cover all the vessel markets, tankers, dry bulk, liner, offshore, etc. We've also expanded to other areas such as FFAs, waste oil solutions, market research via our Alpha products, and data and trade flow services via Axis Marine. The middle of last year, we at BRS started to take a deep dive into the topic of sustainable shipping, specifically around the subjects of carbon credits and emission trading. Up to that date, before this deep dive, the main topics have been around ship design, technologies, and alternative fuels, topics usually dealt by our asset and projects departments. But there was no mention of carbon credits, allowances, etc. yet. But then in September, we had the EU make their announcements regarding including shipping in the carbon market. As a shipbroker, we have the duty to keep our clients well informed, specifically the future price of freight. This announcement now implied that the future price of freight would not only be determined by the price of fuel oil, MGO, OPEX, port costs, etc., but would also be determined by costs to pollute, i.e. the price of carbon. Therefore, we determined that we need to be active in this field. We learned that there are two markets, and I will do a quick overview of those two markets for those that do not know. The compliance markets are also referred to as cap and trade emission reduction markets, are markets where companies buy and sell carbon emission allowances to comply with the cap or limit imposed on their emissions. The EU is making shipping enter by 2022, 2023, and increasingly pushing more on it. The US has started its first steps in this direction, and China plans to also include shipping into their national ETS program by 2025. The voluntary carbon market, also known as the VCM, functions outside of compliance markets. It enables businesses, governments, NGOs, and individuals to voluntarily offset their emissions by purchasing carbon credits from nature-based or industrial projects. For example, retrofitting a vessel with putting on anti-fouling paint, which reduces the drag on the vessel, or a rainforest reforestation project in Brazil. So after studying these markets, we at BRS have decided that we want to cover services where we can assist and guide our clients to help them plan for the up and coming regulations within the compliance market. We plan on offering carbon neutral freight and fleet services by utilizing the voluntary carbon market. And just like we are there for our clients to assist on financial instruments, specifically freight forward agreements, we also plan to offer emission brokerage solutions to our clients. These services are something we are planning to launch in this year, which I look forward to talk more about then. But for today's presentation, I would like to talk about how we at BRS are trying to find creative ways to decarbonize shipping. And with that, what we plan our third service to be. But before I can do so, we need to ask, how can we push forward and speed up the decarbonization of shipping? Because that is where the future of shipping is heading. Specifically, we need to achieve the targets set by the IMO. The initial IMO greenhouse gas strategy was adopted in 2018. It sets ambitious targets to reach a 40% reduction in carbon intensity by 2030 and pursuing efforts towards a 70% reduction by 2050, both compared to a 2008 baseline. These goals can be achieved through many means. First is regulation. For example, the IMO is discussing minimum efficiency rating of vessels and speed restrictions. Then there's the idea of having regional emission trading schemes like what the EU is proposing, Or maybe the IMO will install a more comprehensive scheme like the one for aviation named CORSIA. In addition to what is being discussed at the IMO, Trafigura has proposed a carbon levy of at least $250 per ton of CO2. Another way is through internal CSR policies, which are usually brought on as a marketing tool due to shareholder or employee pressure. For example, setting internal chartering criteria, min vessel efficiency. A third way is by lenders via Poseidon principle, which is where they set the average efficiency ratio for a vessel, and if not met, can lead to the Poseidon compliance fallout, which then can lead to a general stop in lending access with those banks. And lastly, economic incentives. This is non-regulation driven, which in its purest form is cost savings, reduction in fuel consumption, but also revenues, specifically via the voluntary carbon market. So for this presentation, the most interesting topics fall under the finance pressure and economic incentives, specifically revenues via the VCM, the voluntary carbon market. Here's a quick overview of the offset cycle of the VCM. A project is selected, and if no methodology exists, then it will need to be established. Projects range from reforestation, renewable energy, to retrofitting of vessels. Once the project is up and running, it is then verified by one of the standards. Then a verified emission reduction unit is produced, i.e. carbon credit, after which a customer buys the credit to either hold them or retire them. This transaction is performed via an OTC market, though some electronic exchanges are coming online. The proceeds will then flow back into the project. The important takeaway here is that the buyer of these credits sees themselves somewhat as an investor in the project, and with that also chooses a project which they believe in, mainly used as a marketing tool. But the project itself will also go up in value over time as it proves itself more. This leads to an increase in demand, an increase in price, which leads to more revenue for said project. And this brings me to the main point. Shipping can use the VCM to invest in itself and with that propel it through the energy transition. For the shipping market, there are already two methodologies in existence, which I will go into more detail in the next slide. Here is a general example on how the VCM can be applied to the shipping retrofit market. A methodology selected, adapted, or developed. It's approved by a selective voluntary trading scheme. Project is developed, group of vessels are identified, retrofits are selected and installed, a baseline estimation is completed, and monitoring commences. Then you have data collection, data analyzation, claim for credits is submitted to the voluntary scheme for approval, verification completed by an independent third-party auditor, then validation, where the governing body of the scheme validates and issues the credits. And finally, the most interesting part, monetization. Money then flows back to the owner of the projects. This can either be the retrofit technology developer, project owner, or the ship owner that has installed these retrofits, or a mix of them. So 1 ton of fuel saved amounts to about $350 of fuel consumption saved, plus 3.2 tons of carbon emissions avoided. The rate for these types of credits have historically varied between $5 to $10 per ton of CO2. But my view is that they have much more upward momentum now, given all the interest in ESG topics. These credits are produced every year for a max of 5 years, where then the project needs to be reevaluated. The beauty of this is that the buyers of these credits can be anyone. Other ship owners that want to offer carbon neutral freight solutions, charters that want to offer carbon neutral cargo, banks and insurances that have or don't have shipping exposure. Of course, those that do have some shipping exposure might pay a bit more for these relevant credits. So really anyone can buy them. So whereas a carbon levy is only a tax on ship owners, the voluntary carbon market involves all stakeholders so that anyone can have their input in pushing shipping through the energy transition. The proceeds of these credits then fund the research in other technology and provide economic incentives for their application. As mentioned, currently, there are two methodologies in the VCM related to shipping. Both are gold standard methodologies. The first methodology was established by AkzoNobel for the anti-fouling paint. This was the first retrofit methodology launched in 2014 and laid the groundworks for what is to come. The second methodology is an expansion of the first, but what sets it apart is that the ability to apply to almost any technology. It was started in 2017, but has never been used. The issue with these two methodologies are that they are backward-looking and require one docking cycle worth of data to establish an emissions baseline. Another minor issue is the modeling takes the application to wind tech difficult, but there's room to improve on these methodologies. One idea is to create a more forward-looking methodology which takes a smaller snapshot of the data to establish a baseline. The other is to improve on the modeling techniques to include wind tech. This can be done via a new methodology, expanding on the existing ones or including it in the forward-looking one. A more complicated approach is to create a methodology that can be applied to new buildings. And a more innovative and exciting idea is to have a ship recycling and replacement methodology, which I want to talk to you in more detail about. The ship recycling and replacement methodology is an idea we have started discussing internally with our partners. Basically, what it means is scrapping an inefficient vessel in an environmentally friendly way, so HKC compliant, as advocated by us or TI, of course, then replacing that vessel with a more efficient retrofitted ship, even better, at a zero emission fuel like hydrogen. The carbon credits produced is the difference between what would have been consumed given the old ship and what you consume now with the new. The idea would be that these credits are produced every year until what would have been the projected max lifespan of the scrapped vessel. So some easy math. Take an old VLSFO MR, is scrapped and replaced with a hydrogen-powered one. 30 metric tons of fuel oil per day saved, 260 days of sailing, times 3.2 tons of CO2 per metric ton of fuel. That amounts to 25,000 carbon credits per year. Then multiplied by how many years the scrap vessel could have existed and continued polluting. As you can see, this can become economically interesting quite fast. It is important to note that similar types of methodologies already exist in the auto industry. We have the Carhaven in Ontario, was a car replacement scheme to incentivize regular car drivers to buy more efficient ones. Then there is the CDM methodology, which was used for a commercial fleet replacement, like taxi fleets in developing countries. So what I like very much about this potential methodology is that it answers one of the harder questions in decarbonization of shipping, and that is how can we speed up the conversion of the existing fleet to more energy efficient and fitted with new technologies? Well, this potential methodology might just be the answer. So for now, this is just an idea, but what we are looking for partners, ship owners, NGOs, technology providers that would be interested in funding a feasibility study for such a methodology and then help in creating it. So how can we help you as a ship owner technology provider right now, given existing methodologies? So what we have set up is what we're calling the Ship Efficiency Platform. For a ship owner, this means we can source and pool together technologies that can improve your vessel, calculate emissions, and develop a carbon credit project. For a technology provider, we would work with you to find owners that would like to have interest in retrofitting their vessel. Then once a project is developed and credits are being produced, we will help the project owners finance the carbon credits. Our goal is to sell the credits as part of our carbon neutral freight initiative to charters and ship owners, or even banks and insurance and any other stakeholders in shipping, thereby ensuring the industry invests in itself. So therefore, this is what our structure will look like, covering the compliance and voluntary market and innovating in the retrofit and ship replacement arena. We are also in the process of developing an emissions calculator, but more on that another time. So what I want to leave you with is the following. Here's a screenshot of part of Trafigura's proposal of 250 to 300 metric per ton of CO2 carbon levy. Now think carbon credits and how much revenue can be made with prices just halfway. So that's just some food for thought. That is all. Thank you. And I hope you found this interesting and informative. That is the end of my presentation. So please feel to contact us. Yeah. How are we on time, Kevin?
Yep, excellent. Thank you very much, Alex. That was great. And likewise, if any questions come in, we'll feed you them to you, and you can respond by email. So thank you very much.
Perfect.